Thank you for joining us on Elections 2017. This is a live simulcast of the NBC. As Papua New Guinea looks forward to the 2017 national election, it may also want to pay tribute to one of the country's founding fathers. Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare was among leading figures who had pushed PNG to independence and became the country's first leader. His ill-clocked 50 years of active political life in PNG's ever-fluid political landscape has made great strides to move the country forward over the years. However, his route was not all rosy. He had pitfalls along the way as well. Among them was when he became the first sitting Prime Minister to stand trial in a leadership tribunal and his eyebrow-raising illegal ousting as Prime Minister in 2011. Elections 2017 is privileged to oust him in what may be his last engagement in public life. I spoke to Sir Michael earlier about his election-related experiences over the years. Thank you, Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare. Sir Michael, you have been a very active, or must I say, in fact, the most outstanding participant of elections in Papua New Guinea. Even before the country gained independence, there were the House of Assembly elections, which eventually built up to the first national elections in 1977. Tell us about the climate of the elections in this first national event.
Well, I was involved in the elections going back in 1964. I was interpreter and a school teacher, and I was called for simultaneous translations. And I've done a lot of election work under the Reconstituted Legislative Council, starting in 1961, before we became House of Assembly. When House of Assembly started in 1964, I did not seek election, I was still teaching. But in 1968, when it started, I took part in the elections. I went out campaigning and doing something. By then, I became already a proposer of famous slogan called Pangu Party. And I was involved in 1968 elections. That was when I became a member, when I was elected. After nomination in 1968, I nominated for I was trying to nominate for one electorate in Angoram, which is my own home district, but I decided that it would be better if I nominated for a regional seat of East Sepik. And in those days, it was very difficult for local groups like us, myself and Paul Langro, and quite a number of us who tried this. It was reserved for white people, but I thought I had a go at it. My advantage of having a go at it was that because I would work for Radio Wewak, and my voice was very famous, very popular in Sepik, and everywhere in the Pacific, they listened to that voice. So I think that really helped me, And that's when I started my first election in 1968. It was tough time. We had to go out and fought the elections because we were told that we're not qualified. Papua New Guineans are not are ready for anything like change of government. I took that challenge for myself, and I said, I'll have it a go, and I did, yeah.
Grand Chief, give us a comparison of the campaign style back then as compared to now. Most Papua New Guineans weren't as educated back then as are they today. Was it difficult in comparison to today's campaign climate?
In those days, it was definitely difficult. For those of us who received some formal education, we're fortunate to be able to nominate and stand for election, and we knew policies that we are pronouncing to people, and we know exactly what we were doing. And only a handful of us, Papua New Guineans. But I thought it's good challenge, and it was a big challenge for us because history goes back to show that we were even told by our friends, Australians and famous people like Minister for External Territories, this country will not be ready for elections, or this country will not be ready for 50 years' time. You will have your independence and you'll have your say, but no, not after 50 years. But it didn't eventuate, We cut it short, made a shortcut of it, yeah.
Grand Chief, you were ousted 3 years after being elected as Prime Minister after the 1977 elections. In 1980, you were ousted by Sir Julius Chen in the first vote of no confidence. But in the second national elections in 1982, you won back the election and also the prime ministership. You were the leader of Pangu Party. Did Papua New Guineans really vote for you along those famous Pangu lines, Pangu Savelong Road, or did they vote for you as personally as the most popular Papua New Guinean then?
You have to, in those days, I have to appeal to the audience, the kind of audience that I had. And maybe I mastered pidgin speaking very well. And I was able to think about things in English and translate it into pidgin. I think that helped me. And that's what made some of our educated people won the election in 1968 onward, It was very difficult times, because you have to have enough money to run for a big seat like Isipik. For me, it was very difficult, and I thought I had to use bicycle, I had to walk, carry my little rucksack. I use bicycles where road is flat. Sometimes with the help of my own people, they put me on the back of the working truck belonged to the Australian friend of mine, Frank Martin, on the back of the truck. Leave me somewhere, and I use the bicycle to walk the mountains, yes. With the help of Sir Peter Luce, who encouraged me to run for politics, yes.
And there were other parties like the United Party, which was a very close friend of the Pangu. They went together into forming parties in the government and then over to the opposition. What was were political parties ideal for Papua? Did they appeal to Papua New Guineans then, or was it the individual?
I think it was more or less individual. Political parties in those days is a bad word amongst the people of Papua New Guinea. The Australians who were administering our country definitely went out and told them that don't go for political parties in the House of Assembly, or even don't form political parties, because they wanted to divide us that way. And I did not see that right way of doing things, and I thought it's best I started a political party. And I started Pangu Party by like-minded Papua New Guineans who I went to Sigeri with, or went to administrative staff college, and people who speak the same kind of tongue. And I thought I appealed to them more. Then I think I thought that I can appeal to people of my electorate in Isipik. But I think people of Isipik understood pidgin very well, and I think my influence has been that I have been a radio announcer, and Nek Blong Sipik was my voice that comes through every night, every day, and people know the name very well. That's why I got elected here.
Grand Chief, we move 10 years ahead into 2002. That was when Papua New Guinea underwent its 6th national elections. Records and observations have shown that the elections in 2002 was chaotic and violent. There were a number of elections that did not turn out well. There were sabotage in the islands region, and a number of electorates were not declared as a result. Your National Alliance Party, however, survived. They came home with 19 candidates. And what was your experience of that election period?
Well, that election period was a very difficult time for us. for educated Papua New Guineans. I think they saw some light why we need to be grouping together before we go into politics. And I think that's what led number of us who formed the political parties to come. Like early elections, there were two famous parties, Pangu Party and People's Progress Party and National Party, of course, and of course come United Party. A United Party was formed because of the elected members who were elected by universal franchise. They were elected to parliament, but they were people who did not have formal education, who were led by other small groups. Small groups were white people, you know. We had planters, we had Europeans who came, crocodile hunters like crocodile hunters in Sepik or in Gulf. They become members of parliament, members of the House of Assembly. And of course, they misled our people by telling them that you are not prepared for anything. And for those of us who saw the opportunity, of course, in those days, discrimination was practiced very highly. And most of you young people would not know what it was like, life is like. When some of us, when I was a young man like you, it was difficult for me to go through the process because white people had all their say. All white man, yarim talk all master, that's all. All master, only larim all line place, only yarim talk all that's all. People man place, hard through lo but you know, this is process of learning and process of education which we went through. 2002 election was very difficult for us. We had a lot of problems. Electoral system was not correct at the time. Yes, people know how to vote. We lined up like earlier on in 1961 and 61 election. They had Papua New Guineans had to line up under the electoral college system, and they select a leader. And when the leader is selected, people line up and put his name down, you know. But, you know, these things change over time. And with the education, as learning process went ahead, that's what happened. And 2002 was very difficult for us. There are deaths in the families. Up in the islands, it was worse. There were fightings and people were fighting for, you know. I don't know why Papua New Guineans have to fight to win that election. You know, at the end of it, it's very, very difficult for you to get to parliament and sit down there and be listened to at times. When they don't listen to you, you get frustrated and you bail out, you like chorus, you like fight. Hey, there's no something like fight. You mean like new passing white man. And 2002 was a difficult time. Yes, we went to elections in 2002. I had numbers who supported a National Alliance, and we of course had to form a grouping with Sir Julius Chan, Thomas Cavalli, and all these people. We were all united and we formed ourselves as a groupings. And then of course United Party. United Party was a composition of Wally Lasik from New Ireland and all the other planters in the Highlands and Papua. They all organized and they called themselves United Party. They are not united in spirit, they're united in their accents only. There were elements of us, those who had some form of education, thought that we should be better organized. That's how we formed organizations like Pangu Party and People's Party, People's National Congress came later. Rest of us, early ones, Pangu and PPP, and of course now comes National Party and independence. And it was difficult in those days, but we were able to learn more. And of course, those who were ahead of us had a responsibility to show us the way things are going. When we went to House of Assembly, first time we were given a week or two lessons on how we conduct ourselves as members, how to ask questions, how to frame questions, how to listen to what other people have to say. How do you interpret what the other member is saying? You translate it in the format that you understand. So that was a difficult, very difficult election for us. But I think we made it. We made a government. People said we will not be able to form the government. No one ever thought Papua New Guinea would be this shape today. But I met an old man today, and it reminded me, Mackenzie Daugi, from Northern Province. He walked into Parliament to collect his pension, and he reminded me of early actions when we started with the going out, and people were saying, "You don't do this. You don't have to vote for this man. He's radical. He's trying to destroy the society," things like that. And that's what they all said about me. But I said, with the people's wishes, we will be able to guide and teach our people how we think how the country should be run. And we did it. We did it successfully, yes.
The political and constitutional situation of 2012 bore heavily on the elections in that year. There were many fiery emotions right across the country. You had returned from hospital in Singapore and was hit by your ousting in Parliament, both as the regional member for East Sepik and as Prime Minister. Did you for once, Grand Chief Sir Michael, did you for once think that this was the last of your political career and the end of you contesting the elections?
Well, in many ways people will say that was my end. That's what I thought. I will not respond to what they did to me, because most of the people who voted against me were my own party people and my ministers in the government who ganged together with Peter O'Neill and Bernard Nama and all these people, and they got rid of me. But me, I've got a fighting spirit. I never gave up. When these Sepik people said to me, "We'll send you back to Parliament. You go back and be our member." And that's what I did. And I've shown their believe in me from the beginning, since 1968 to now. And they've kept me in the seat for almost 48 years, 49 years now, yeah. And if I was to run again, I have a pretty good chance of getting re-elected. But who wants to do that again, One gets sick of it, And old man, I was young when I was thinking of going to the election, but I can't do things anymore. My hearing is no good. What's the point in wasting my time, yeah?
The elections, the situation, the political situation bore on the elections. Your experience, what were some impacts that political situation had into the elections, into the conduct of elections then?
In some parts of Papua New Guinea, elections were conducted very well. People came to vote, cast their vote for the member and went. In some parts of Papua New Guinea, there was no sufficient understanding of the voting system. There were a lot of confusions and, of course, a lot of misleading. Even the electoral officers and the people who were in the villages were confused. But people went and voted. What our people didn't understand was that the way they manipulated the system. In some electorate, they manipulate the system. I know I went through the same experience many times, but it didn't work because my message through talking to people and going out there and explaining to them the process of formation of government and getting into government and how governments are run. And I explained properly to people. That's why I think the East Sepik people kept me there for a very, very long time. And I consider themselves to be very astute, very alert on what's going on in politics.
Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare, thank you so much for your time on Elections 2017.
Thank you. Thank you for
Papua New Guinea's most distinguished election participant and politician, Sir Michael Somare. Elections 2017, NBC's live simulcast will return right after these messages.